we serve different markets, and certain markets respond to digital learning technologies portfolio. For example, clearly, the corporate e-learning market, you'd like to think could like to do learning online.
Well, that was a digital market to begin with anyway. So
it was a digital market to begin with, but we've done some webinars, etc. in previous years, but we really decided to focus on the areas of the business where it made sense.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this week's videocast. This morning, our guest is one of the most successful people in the industry today. If we're to use the approbation of our peers, the accumulation of awards awarded by our peers, then our guest today has won more awards than anybody else in marketing in the last 9 years in the UK. That includes 7 best marketing managers and 7 best marketing campaigns, and more awards than any other company at last year's first digital awards. That's not to mention 8 best trade show awards. So our guest this morning is Alexia Maycock. Alexia, with that remarkable track record over the past decade, could you explain why, please?
Well, thank you for that introduction, Phil. Why have we won so many awards? Several reasons for me, really. I think one of the most important things for me is that our marketeers know their markets, are passionate about their markets. They write the awards themselves. I don't get external agencies to write them. I believe the people across all of the awards that CloserStill have won, they write them themselves because they know their products, they know their shows, they know what they did, and they get to inject their passion for their products, which I think is vital. It also gives them a chance to reflect on what they've actually achieved over the previous year, which I think is very important. Why are we the best as voted by our peers, as you say? I think it might sound cliched, but I think we care a lot. We are very, very hardworking for our events. It matters to the individuals. They're not just doing it as a job. The pride in delivering those campaigns or delivering those events is very, very visible around the building, not only during the awards, but it's just they want to win, they want to succeed, they want to get the best visitor numbers, they want to get the best shows out the door.
There's a consistency, isn't it? I mean, the teams running our major events have been in place for a decade, which is very, very unusual. I mean, in some cases, after that, I mean, people have a tendency to go stale, but we don't seem to be seeing this happening.
We don't, and we have great loyalty around the business. And you're right, Phil. I have many of my senior marketeers joined the business as graduates when they were 21, first job, and are still with me 8, 9, 10 years later. Many of whom are on the same products that they started on. And even discussions with them about moving shows brings fear in their eyes because they want to continue on the same shows because they're so passionate about them. I think you can become stale on a product if you're not allowed to be involved with the strategy and change things and challenge things, which at CloserStill we do all the time. Every single year we do a new marketing plan from scratch. We question everything, we analyze everything, we try new things that may not work sometimes, but we still keep trying. So people keep their interest and their passion and their belief about their events.
I must compliment you on your English because, of course, your background is Dutch and French.
Yeah, well, it's the northern schools I went to, I think. They beat it out of me.
Okay, how did you get into this business?
As many of us, randomly, I finished my degree at Manchester University, didn't know what to do. A friend of mine called me and said, we've got a room free in our flat in London. Do you fancy it? Put my rucksack on my back and traveled down on a coach and got a job as a marketing assistant for a manufacturing company. And my main role was to run their internal global sales conference, hence event organizing, and also to manage their presence at exhibitions.
That's quite a big job for somebody straight out of university.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, very much so. And my degree was in French. It was nothing to do with events or marketing.
But it's easy to get a degree in French if you speak French.
It's very easy. Yeah, no, I'm not going to claim it's hard work at all. Don't forget, in those days it was free. I absolutely loved it. I did that for 2 years and then decided that the event route was what I wanted. That was the part of my job that I loved the most, and got a job with Pentamedia with Andy Centre and Phil Nelson. And not long after yourself.
What year was that? Was that before we bought?
Without
Penton's...
giving away my age, it was 1999.
So it was just before we bought Penton's European exhibitions.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, they were the days, without getting into too much detail, they were the days when Penton went off and spent 100 million on a streaming show.
Exactly then, yeah.
Which I think probably still ranks as the single biggest acquisition mistake in trade show history, because having spent $100 million, they never ran it, did they?
No, never ran
it. Absolutely remarkable story. And a lesson to anybody observing, the kind of mistakes that's possible to make in the industry. That's right. And then we bought the Penton European business, and then you carried on working with the same team of people that you're working with now.
Correct.
Who influenced you most in this period?
Oh, that's a good question. Lots of people. Yourself, obviously, Phil. You and I have worked very closely together. Phil Nelson, very much so. One of the best commercial minds I've ever worked with. There's somebody that continues to challenge me, which is very important for me. I don't want to be in a position where people think I know it all. And
drives you nuts sometimes, if I recall.
Yeah, very much so. Andy Centre as well, of course, who did give me my first job in this industry. And in fact, when I was given my first job, and of course I didn't have experience, as I've said, in exhibitions from this side, I said, you've got fire in your belly and passion, and that's what you need in this business. And that's what I've continued to look for in the team that I built as well, because it's very true.
Yeah, and generally, I mean, you don't pay a great deal of attention to academic qualifications, do you, when you're bringing people in?
I don't know. I think, I believe you can teach people events, but you've got to have we call it the bug. And it's, we at CloserStill, of course, have a big graduate program and always have had a big policy of bringing in very young talent and people with completely unrelated degrees like myself. I think one of our sort of largest contingent of degrees is geography, which of course has absolutely nothing to do with events.
Colouring in, you mean?
Colouring in. Yeah. But people come in and get that bug, and you can see it. And I mean, obviously, we've done a large recruitment drive in the last few months, and you just see it arrive in their eyes. You see that sort of, they get it, and just get wrapped up in it. It's great to see.
Do you? I mean, CloserStill within the industry is known for a number of things, but in particular, the uniqueness of the share scheme, the share situation, the fact that right from the start, when Andy and I had our very first meeting, we allocated 50% of the shares to the employees. I mean, to what extent does that affect the fact that we have people of such long standing, people who've been with us for such a long time? And indeed, does it affect people coming into the business? This is quite an important point. It's not meant to be a promotional video for CloserStill, but CloserStill is unique in that respect. And I do get questioned quite often by contemporaries and other businesses as to what difference it does or doesn't make.
Oh, it makes a big difference without a shadow of a doubt. It makes people feel they belong even more. They're not, obviously, for people that don't know, they're not shares that you get dividends on every year. They're shares that only come into effect when we get new investment and new investors. And people, over those years have seen that come to fruition. They're not a sort of pipe dream. They actually are real. And it makes them feel part of that business. It makes them feel like they're not just doing their job to, line the pockets of others. They actually have a part of it and a piece of it, which undoubtedly makes them, want success even more than they would.
Yeah, it's hard to judge it, isn't it? Because it's very hard to make a direct comparison with other organisations that don't have similar schemes. In other words, there's no metric by which you can say it's worth A or it's worth B or it's worth C. But it's certainly one of the most interesting things about the business, and it's not what we expected when we started, because while it was a very good idea and we did the same thing at Ithaca, and indeed even going back to Blenheim, we had a very, very good, very strong share option scheme. We never expected it to turn out the way that it's turned out, of course. But as I say, it's one of the things that makes the company very different. Let's go on to the marketing side. You're in charge of everything marketing, everything digital, and you act as the sort of centralizing force within the business as well. Okay, what are the challenges that the marketing department and the marketeers face at the moment?
Well, obviously the last 18 months have been challenging for everybody. And the sort of challenges that the marketing team have faced in particular is how to keep engaged with your audiences whilst not being able to bring people together once a year face to face. And in some ways, it's allowed us to regroup and reset, look at our data more, be far more targeted, and really analyze what we've done in the past and how we can make that even better. We've implemented a dedicated digital team now, which we didn't have previously. I think we'd got to a point where we were sort of expecting each marketeer to be an expert in everything. And of course, the marketing mix is so enormous, it's not really possible. So we've brought in expertise to build that expertise within the team. So the digital team train and empower the marketeers to be able to do digital marketing more, which has been quite exciting this year, very exciting. And we're now seeing, obviously having run 10 events so far this year, we're seeing the rewards in implementing that. I think, the digital event side of things, we didn't run it across the entire portfolio of events because it didn't work in some events. And we've seen that sort of peter off almost now that live events are back. And I think with events coming back, the challenge has been accepting lower numbers, lower pre-reg numbers, harder to get pre-reg numbers for post-pandemic, and the different challenges that brings in, but in a positive way, in that, there are certain things that are outside of your control. Of course they are, but you've got to try even more different ways of engaging with people to get them to come to the live event. Because at the end of the day, whilst we may have digital elements supporting our business, it's the live events that...
In the last 18 months, if there's been any debate within the industry, it's been pivot to digital. Now, yeah. you took a view really right from the start, although of course, you won more awards, more trophies at the digital awards last year than any other company. But you took a view early on that taking the whole company towards pivot to digital was, I won't say it was the wrong idea. That's unfair because in a sense the jury's out, but that it wasn't really the direction you wanted to go in. Can you talk a little bit about why you felt that?
Well, I think, we serve different markets, and certain markets respond to digital learning technologies portfolio. For example, clearly, the corporate e-learning market you'd like to think could like to do learning online.
Well, that was a digital market to begin with anyway. So
it was a digital market to begin with, but we'd done some webinars, etc. in previous years, but we really decided to focus on the areas of the business where it made sense, such as the learning technologies portfolio, to increase the digital activity there, which will continue going forward. Other parts of our business, like the world of pharmacy, no response to digital at all, other than a monthly newsletter. So we weren't going to force that onto anyone. So we literally again, it comes back to our heads of teams knowing their markets and testing their markets and knowing what would work in those markets, that there was no need for every single show to pivot to digital, because you can't flog a dead horse, if you like. So we pushed our focus onto the areas that we knew would respond within those 18 months to digital, which we did, obviously winning 3 awards very successfully, because it's not an area of the business we'd ever really invested or focused on. So, when some bits will continue, but very minimal really going forward.
And is that the sense you get that our marketplaces, we can't speak for marketplaces in which we have no interest, but within our marketplaces, that that actually the digital issues, I won't say they've gone away, but that there doesn't seem to be any demand for them from our own marketplaces, from our own customers.
Correct. The appetite has waned. And I mean, for having seen the live events that we've run in the last 6 weeks, I mean, the almost desperation to see people in the flesh has been far even greater than I thought it would be. People clearly they call it, don't they, Zoom fatigue. I think people have reached a bit of that, and people want to do face to face. And like I say, that doesn't mean like we're in certain markets, we're not in others, but in our markets there's very limited areas that we will really continue to really invest in that.
Let's go back to something you were talking about earlier, which is actually you have run a large number now of very successful events since the 1st of September, very successful in the sense of rebooks and the mood and feel, etc. But you're quite right in saying attendances were lower than they had been 2-3 years ago. Not dramatically lower, but lower. And also that conversion rates, this is a big issue, the discussions that we have on the AEO board about conversion rates. The conversion rates across the board, I'm not just talking about ourselves, but other companies as well, seems to have dropped quite significantly. Why do you think that is? And do you think it has meaning? And do you think it has implications for the future?
Well, first of all, it's shocked me, I have to say. It's not what I predicted would happen with conversion rates. I was of the belief before we started events that post-pandemic, people that would really think about registering, and therefore the conversion would be higher. So, in
other words, fewer registrations, but the conversion rate therefore higher, because there was a smaller pool to fish in, so to speak.
Exactly, and that's what I believed would happen. Obviously, hasn't been the case across the industry, and we. The reasons, obviously, we, as ever, with every year and every show we ever run, we do a lot of post-show analysis, and sadly, that post-show analysis is actually not far different to what it was previously, when people say why they didn't end up coming to the show. I had work, I was too busy, my child.
It's almost the most pointless question.
It is.
For my 30 years in the business, because the answer is almost invariably something else came up which I had to do.
Exactly.
Which is a way of getting you off the phone. But it's also probably true.
Yeah, I'm sure it's true, but it is also, I was sort of hoping that there might be some little gem in there that would come out, but no, it was the same responses. So which has allowed us to, we've immediately totally shifted within like 3 to 4 weeks pre-show onto conversions. to really drive the people we have.
Yeah.
Piling far more time. Normally we revert to conversion calls in the 2 weeks before. Now it's 4
Yeah.
weeks, and we're sort of starting with the later registrations and coming in, pushing, competitions on site, really pushing for the conversions to get higher rather than fight for new registrations. Although we still obviously continue that as well. The reasons for it, I don't think it's a long-term issue. I think they will return. I don't think it's something that, or that just our registrations will get higher, and we'll get more visitors. I've got no doubt about that. It has caused amongst the marketing team, some of them very disappointed, not realizing what they've achieved at the event so far is truly phenomenal. And the audiences have seemed to be a lot higher quality. And I know, having been in this industry a long time, the old quantity versus quality is always said.
Worst of all the trade show cliches.
It is one of the worst of the cliches. However, it does seem to be that the more senior people are coming out and the business is being done on site. And you can see it. I mean, you walk around the shows, you can see it. There's a different feeling around it.
Yeah, I mean, there are certain obvious elements. I mean, which is just simply mathematical elements. I mean, we're being very rigid, as are the venues, about prove the double vaccination before you can come in. I mean, we're very, very determined on that. That, by definition, will keep a certain number of people away when they realise that's going to be the case. And also because we've not run shows for 2 years, part of the registration. The set of registrations are going to be older.
Yes.
And as we know, the closer you get, the closer a registration is made to a show, the more likely it is that that person will turn up. So in mathematical terms, setting aside all other considerations, you could imagine that conversion would drop for those 2 reasons alone. I'm not saying that's sole explanation for everything, because it's impossible to quantify. But there are 2 strong mathematical drivers of those numbers. There's a fair bit of concern being expressed in the industry. I'm rather like yourself. I mean, in a way, we've only had 2 months. I mean, it's only really since the beginning of September. So it's very, very early to be excessively analytical about it. But I tend to agree with you that a large number of elements will change as time goes through, and it will probably not be seen to be an issue by, say, the middle of next year.
No, I don't think so. And obviously, for us, for CloserStill, excuse me, the shows we've run in the UK have all been healthcare.
Yeah.
And with everything that's going on, everybody knows that the healthcare. We've had pharmacists, hospital pharmacists, dentists. These people are up against it. Hence, why they may not be able to give up a day or 2 at the moment, whilst they thought they might. But the other interesting thing about the shows, which again is not, I don't think, a long-term thing, it's again pandemic-wise, is on our tech shows. The last 2 weeks of registrations are generally, it's to the wire on any technology shows. On the healthcare shows, you get a nice, it's more long-term registrations, whereas this year the healthcare shows are going to the last 2 weeks as well. So it's not good for the nerves, but
No, it's not. And something which is interesting, which is happening, you're talking about technology there. We have a number of shows in Spain, we have a number of shows in France, we have a number of shows in Germany in that sector. We seem to be seeing that those markets are, if anything, stronger than the UK in terms of exhibitor response, in terms of visitor response. In other words, they are, in each of those markets, our shows are growing compared with 2019. And in some senses quite materially. And I'm wondering, I mean, you, because of your background is European, do you have a sense of why that might be the case? Are those markets just further advanced? Or are we talking, of course, about the European markets are, of course, economically considerably stronger than the UK market now?
Well, they are. I mean, that's that's a fact. I also think that the rules in place in France, Germany, and Spain are much stricter.
Yeah.
As we know, everybody has to wear a mask at every show, and the double vaccinations, etc. So it's kind of less vague, if I'm honest. So people are like, they're going to go to an event, they're going to go, and they know the rules, and they're comfortable with the rules, and off they go. I mean, our German shows, I mean, you and I were talking earlier, our German technology show, which is at the end of this month, is the biggest it's ever been. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
And whilst I'm sure the person that runs that event would say it's all down to the great team, etc., and I'm sure it's got a lot to do with that. The markets are buoyant, and the technology sector in France, Germany, and Spain. We ran our Spanish show last week. I mean, it's incredible. Desperate to get out there, desperate to do business.
Yeah, that's very encouraging. Let's talk about the subject that you and I talk about, and you talk to other people in the industry about, which is actually the challenges of the internet, or as people of my age call it, the interweb. And I mean, it's the front page of every newspaper every day. The massive changes which continue all of the time, and how we as an industry are dealing with them. And this is essentially about how we contact people, how we communicate with people. I mean, it's not that long ago you and I were working together, and we were sending out physical tickets to everybody on a pre-reg list. And indeed, we were sending out physical conference programs to everybody on the list. I mean, we're talking about, within what we'll call living memory here. But this is changing so fast, and it changes all the time. This is a very generic question. How are we dealing with those constant challenges? How are you dealing with those constant challenges? I mean, you've said, we now have a large data department within the organization. I assume that's true of most of our contemporaries as well. But what are the main challenges in that, and how are we trying to deal with them?
Keep hiring young people.
Yes,
You're probably the first one.
Yeah. Yes, we're getting a lot of 12-year-olds in the business at the moment.
Yeah, people's children are starting to come in. Well, first of all, we do still do the old-fashioned routes. We do still send physical tickets out, far less quantities than we used to, of course. And most of it is to drive people to the website and to register digitally. We obviously don't get any more postal reg forms. I think on the pharmacy show, we do still get some faxes back with people's names on, but it's few and far between, for sure. It's keeping on. We do have a large data team. As I said, we've built a digital team as well, and it's about really knowing we're able, through the digital side of things, we're able to have a lot better idea about how our audiences engage with us, like everybody does. So we know what triggers them to register. We know what triggers them to visit a show, or to read a newsletter, or to visit a webinar. And it's constantly being on top of those and doing more of what works within what's happening at that time. Like you say, it moves so fast all the time that you literally have to have expertise in the building that is on top of what's changing on a daily basis, knowing how your audience are engaging and pursuing those areas. I mean, one of the interesting things over the last 18 months is where we did do digital, people that have been on our databases for a very long time who've never engaged with us suddenly were engaging with us through different means that we were using on the digital side of things. So you're constantly getting to new people, which makes it interesting. For me, it makes it challenging. You can't rest on your laurels at all. No longer, like you say, no longer could you just send a direct mail for 200,000 people with a registration form that comes back and then gets put into a spreadsheet. It's coming from all angles. Social media as well. We've got people that are solely doing social media now.
It becomes it's upside down, isn't it? Because again, if we go back even 7-8 years, we would sit and discuss how we were going to approach marketing for a particular show and debate it at great length. And now it's upside down. In reality, you're asking the 12-year-olds to decide what to do, and then presumably just say, yeah, okay, then. I'm sure it's a bit more complicated than that.
A little bit more complicated, but yeah. I think it's, like I said earlier on, we do big marketing plans from scratch, and everybody's involved with those. So you're getting inputs from everywhere, which is the most important thing. I mean, a marketeer, when I started, we didn't have email. We just about started doing websites. So you had websites, and you had direct mail, and you had telemarketing and fax shots. Now suddenly that number of contact points to get to people is I can't even list them all. There's so many.
Yeah.
So, bringing in people's different opinions, working with partners very closely, which we always have done, but even more so now, on how they're getting touch points as well.
Yeah.
And using exhibitors, we've always done that, but we're really ramping that up now as well. So it's just bringing in as many ideas are on the table as possible. I'm sure I'm sure there's a lot more out there that we need to be doing as well. So we just keep on,
And going back to one of our favorite subjects, the reason why people go to trade shows, and if you like, the importance of the non-tangibles as opposed to the tangibles. Within the industry, if you look across, doesn't matter what the company is, you look across 20 websites for large size shows, there's still an assumption on those websites that people go to shows because of the buying and selling process. That's how the shows are sold. Come to buy, come to sell, all of these things. Whereas we know that people go to shows for a far, far wider range of reasons. And if anything, they go for the intangibles rather than the tangibles. Of course, if you interview somebody on site and say, why are you here? They'll all say, oh, well, because we're looking for new products. We're looking for that. Of course, they'll say that because that's what they're expected to say. But do you think, and this is particularly relevant to social media because of the effects of Facebook, Instagram, etc., do you think we're orientating ourselves enough to the real reasons that people go? I'm not saying the buying and selling element isn't important, but the intangibles are extremely important. Seeing your friends, getting out of the office for, people actually like to go to Birmingham for 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. Do you think we're approaching that in the way that we could be, or are we afraid of saying to people, look, this is a good opportunity to meet your friends, to see what's going on. Actually, in truth, you're not even sure why you're going, but something might crop up because you might just see something and think, oh, that's interesting.
I think we have used that far more this year. We have actually, because a lot, as you well know, all of our healthcare shows carry CPD, and we've always led with that actually on the education side of things. Whereas what we've seen at the events so far and what we've been promoting is actually the networking, the meeting your friends, the intangible things, because that's what we're seeing, that, you just have to stand and look at a show at the moment and that's what's happening.
Yeah.
It always happened, but it seems to be that everybody, post-pandemic, people are clearly so happy to see people face to face. It's, it's, remarkable. So we are actually on our marketing pushing a lot more of that fact rather than buying and selling, because that's probably why most people get out to a show. I'm not saying they don't go and look at demos, and they don't go to the education, and they go and they are trying out new products. You see it all, and business is being done, and we're being told, but is that the reason they get out of their house in the morning and go? I don't know. The shows we run, like the vet show, for example, is, you only have to watch the social media before the show and how people are visit delegates are interacting with each other about, do you want to lift down there? Should we meet for a coffee? Should we do that? Which has always been the case in London Vet Show because it's a magical show.
And the Birmingham Vet Show next year.
And the Birmingham Vet Show next year. But we're seeing that a lot more in the other industries as well now, much more open about that.
Yeah, I think this is in some ways a critical point about how, as an industry, we recognise what we're doing and whether we need to be prepared to respond. I think a lot of people are scared to do that because they're scared because they think, oh, well, if I do that, then, I can't talk about ROI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I can't do that because it might appear flippant in some way. But if you take really, really big shows, if you take MIDEM and M.I.C.E in Cannes, which I've been to on a number of occasions, really, why do people go to Cannes for 3 or 4 days in the property and the entertainment world? They really, really don't go because they think they're going to do major deals or they're going to sell. They go because everybody in their industry goes and they like being there for 3 or 4 days. Those are, in fact, extremely good examples of social shows.
And that's important. It's hugely important. And I think, it's doing something different as well. We've tried to introduce different things this year as well, like meet the speaker properly, and have it actually, you're getting the interaction and the networking, be it with a speaker, exhibitor, or a friend or whatever. And those are hugely important to get people together massively.
Well, in terms of the development of the interweb and how it's changing all the time, I mean, are there certain things about it that concern you, that you're afraid if it goes in a particular route, we will find it difficult to deal with? Or are you looking and thinking, actually, in a year or two, it might change in that direction, and how are we going to deal with that? Or do we have to be reactive in a sense?
We have to be reactive. You've got to be on top of it the whole time. I can't see, you've just got to use it in the best way you can. And the best way for each of your shows, each of your industries, communities. I don't see it going in a way that concerns me. I just think it's going to go in a way where it's probably going to be even more ways of getting in touch with people, even better ways probably. Certainly probably more cost effective than the old fashioned route as well.
Yeah.
And I think it literally is just keeping on top of that, and you have to keep on top of it. And it's, like we say, it's so fast changing.
It is.
But if you do lose sight of that and you think, well, we'll just carry on doing this, then you'll fade away.
Yeah.
We've got, if you even look at the way things have changed, take the pharmacists, for example, who aren't people that sit in front of a computer all day, and they're not. So we still have to do more old-fashioned routes for them than digital routes. But like for the last 18 months, they've had to get a little bit more on board with digital, and they've had to move a bit forward, but they're far behind the people that visit our tech shows, of course, where you've really got to engage. You've got to speak to your audiences all the time. Of course, we have a full-time telemarketing team within CloserStill that don't just get people to pay for events that are coming, they also telemarket to the free people. So we're getting constant feedback from people on a daily basis about what the market is saying to them and how they've engaged, or which touch point has worked for them, and that's constantly fed back in all the time, which is a massively important part of our business as well.
Okay, Alexia Maycock, winner of more awards than any other person in marketing. I recall that for 5 consecutive years, members of your team won the Marketing Manager of the Year award. Good luck, I would say this, wouldn't I? But good luck in the next 12 months in the same way. Thank you very much this morning, and get back to those shows.
Thank you very much.